The day I watched my daughter Lisa slam her front door in my face, something broke inside me. Not my heart. That had been cracking for years with each cold remark and dismissive glance. No, what shattered that evening was the last thread of delusion I'd been desperately clinging to. That family meant something to her beyond what I could provide financially. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Mom, we've decided it's best if you don't join us for Thanksgiving. This year, she had said just moments before, her voice flat as she stood in the doorway, blocking my entry to the home I'd been making monthly mortgage payments on for the past 7 years. The kids are at a sensitive age, and frankly, your stories about growing up poor just make everyone uncomfortable. Maybe next year. She didn't even look me in the eye as she said it. I stood there stunned, the homemade cranberry sauce still warm in my hands, while inside I could hear my grandchildren laughing with my son-in-law Daniel and his parents, the worthy grandparents apparently. The ones who sent expensive gifts but couldn't remember my grandkids' birthdays without Facebook reminders. That night, driving back to my modest apartment, I made a decision that would change everything. By the time I reached home, my trembling hands had steadied. I opened my laptop, logged into my banking portal, and canceled the automatic mortgage, payment scheduled for the following week. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I called my attorney. My name is Eleanor Walsh, and at 63, I never expected to be starting over. Most women my age are settling into retirement, doting on grandchildren, or taking those dream vacations they've been planning for decades. Instead, I found myself rebuilding my life from scratch, learning what it means to finally put myself first after a lifetime of giving. I wasn't always the woman I am today. For 35 years, I worked as a registered nurse, specializing in pediatric care. The hours were long and often heartbreaking, but there was nothing like the feeling of helping a sick child heal. While my colleagues chased promotions or transferred to higher-paying specialties, I stayed where I felt most needed. My husband, Thomas, supported my career choice, even though it meant living on a tighter budget. We had our daughter Lisa later in life, after years of trying. She was our miracle, and from the moment she arrived, she became the center of our universe. Thomas and I agreed that we would give her every opportunity we never had. I took extra night shifts to pay for piano lessons, summer camps, and eventually college tuition. Sleep became a luxury I willingly sacrificed. "You're spoiling her," my sister warned when Lisa demanded her own car at 16. "She needs to learn the value of hard work." But I didn't listen. I couldn't bear the thought of Lisa feeling the limitations I had growing up. My own mother had worked as a cleaner, coming home with raw hands and an aching back. I still remember wearing the same pair of shoes for 3 years, stuffing the toes with newspaper when they became too small. Lisa would never know that kind of hardship. Not while I could prevent it. When Thomas died suddenly of a heart attack during Lisa's sophomore year of college, everything changed. The life insurance barely covered the funeral expenses and outstanding medical bills. I was suddenly a widow at 50, solely responsible for our remaining mortgage and Lisa's education. "You should sell the house," my financial advisor suggested. "Downsize, invest the difference, and secure your retirement." But I couldn't do it. That house held every memory of Thomas, and it was the only stable home Lisa had ever known. Instead, I picked up weekend shifts at a private clinic and rented out our basement to make ends meet. Somehow, I managed to keep Lisa in her prestigious university without her ever knowing how close we came to financial ruin. After graduation, Lisa met Daniel during a law firm internship. He came from money, old money, the kind of wealth that's been in the family for generations. Their wedding was extravagant, with his parents covering most expenses while I contributed what I could, emptying most of my savings account in the process. "Mom, why can't you afford the mother-of-the-bride dress I picked out?" Lisa asked, frustrated. "It's only $3,000. I didn't tell her that $3,000 was 2 months of mortgage payments. Instead, I found a similar style on sale and altered it myself, staying up 3 nights straight to get the beading just right. When Lisa and Daniel announced they were expecting their first child, they also shared their dream of buying a particular house in Oak Ridge Estates, a prestigious neighborhood where properties rarely came on the market. "It's perfect for raising children," Lisa gushed. "But we're still paying off student loans, and Daniel's trust fund doesn't mature for another 5 years. I saw the opportunity to finally give my daughter the security I'd always wanted for her." Without hesitation, I offered to help with the down payment and monthly mortgage until they were financially stable. "It's what your father would have wanted," I assured her, not mentioning that I would need to postpone my retirement and take a second job consulting at a nursing home to make it work. For 7 years, I faithfully sent that mortgage payment on the first of every month. I never missed once, even when I was hospitalized with pneumonia and had to wire the money from my hospital bed. During those years, I visited the house often, helping with my grandchildren, Adam and Sophia, cooking, meals, tending the garden. I poured my love into that home just as I had poured my financial resources into securing it. At first, Lisa and Daniel seemed grateful. There were thank you cards on holidays, invitations to family gatherings, phone calls to check in. But as time passed, something shifted. The invitations became less frequent, the calls shorter. When I visited, I noticed subtle changes in how I was treated. "Mom, would you mind using the guest bathroom? The master bath was just cleaned," Lisa would say. Or Daniel would comment, "Eleanor, we prefer the children don't have sugary treats," when I brought homemade cookies, though I'd later find store-bought ice cream in their freezer. Then came the excuses for why I couldn't babysit as often. They'd hired a nanny with professional childcare experience. When I offered to help with after-school pickups, Lisa explained they'd enrolled the children in an exclusive program with qualified educators. I tried not to take it personally. After all, every generation has different parenting styles. But it was impossible not to notice how differently Daniel's parents were treated when they visited. They were given the best guest room, consulted on household decisions and their gifts to the children, no matter how impractical or contrary to stated rules, were received with enthusiasm. The final straw came the week before Thanksgiving. I had just finished my shift at the nursing home when Lisa called, asking if I could help with some last-minute holiday preparations. I agreed immediately, happy to be included. When I arrived, the next day, arms laden with groceries I'd purchased, I found Lisa in the kitchen with Daniel's mother, Patricia. "Oh, Mom," Lisa said, looking uncomfortable. "We actually decided to go with Patricia's traditional recipes this year, but you can help set the table if you want." For 3 hours, I folded napkins and arranged flatware while Patricia commanded the kitchen, occasionally shooting smug glances my way. When I suggested adding my cranberry sauce recipe, a dish Thomas had loved, Lisa shook her head. "Daniel prefers the canned kind, Mom. You know that." I bit my tongue and continued working, telling myself it was about being with family, not about recognition. But that evening, as we all sat around the dinner table for an early pre-Thanksgiving meal, Daniel raised a toast that cut deeper than he could know. "To Patricia and William," he said, lifting his glass. "Thank you for always being there for us, for your generosity, and for teaching us what family truly means." Everyone clinked glasses. No one seemed to notice I hadn't been included in the toast, or that my own contributions, both financial and personal, had gone unmentioned. No one except Patricia, who gave me a look that could only be described as victorious. Later, as I was helping clean up, I overheard Lisa and Daniel in the study. "Your mother seemed upset at dinner," Daniel said. "She's always looking for attention," Lisa replied with a sigh. "Ever since Dad died, she's been clinging to us like we're her whole life. It's exhausting." "Well, we still need her for the mortgage," Daniel reminded her. at least until my trust fund comes through next year. I know, Lisa said. I just wish she understood boundaries. The kids barely relate to her anyway. She's so old-fashioned and, honestly, a little embarrassing with her thrift store clothes and constant stories about working hard. I stood frozen, dirty dishes in hand, as their words washed over me. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Was that all I was to them? A convenient bank account with annoying attachment issues? Had I raised a daughter who could speak about me with such callous disregard? I quietly set down the dishes, gathered my purse, and left without saying goodbye. Neither of them called to check if I'd gotten home safely. The next morning, I sent Lisa a text asking about Thanksgiving plans, half hoping there had been some misunderstanding. Her response was swift and direct. We're keeping it small this year, just us and Daniel's parents. The dining room gets too crowded with extra people. I'll save you some leftovers. Extra people. After everything, that's what I'd become. I spent the next few days in a fog, going through the motions at work while my mind replayed years of interactions, looking for where I'd gone wrong. Had I spoiled Lisa too much? Had I failed to teach her gratitude? Or was this simply who she had chosen to become? Someone who valued status and appearance over the sacrifices made on her behalf. Then came that fateful day, the Tuesday before. Thanksgiving, when I decided to surprise them with my homemade cranberry sauce anyway. A peace offering, a small reminder of our family traditions. And found myself standing on the porch, sauce in hand, door firmly shut in my face. That night, after canceling the mortgage payment, I made another decision too. I called my sister Charlotte in Arizona, the one who had warned me about spoiling Lisa years ago. "Char," I said when she answered, "remember when you invited me to come live with you after Thomas died, and I said no because I needed to stay for Lisa?" "Of course I remember," she replied. "The offer still stands, Ellie. Always has." "I think I'm ready now," I told her, my voice steadier than I expected. "But first, there are some things I need to take care of here." The next morning, Thanksgiving Eve, I walked into Meridian Bank and asked to speak with a loan officer. 3 hours later, I emerged with a certified letter in my hand and a weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in decades, I was putting myself first, and it felt like finally being able to breathe. I had made arrangements to finish paying off my own modest mortgage with the money I'd been spending on Lisa's house. The remainder would go toward a comfortable retirement fund. There would be no more extra shifts, no more postponed dreams, no more sacrificing my well-being for someone who couldn't see my worth. As I drove to Lisa's house one last time, I felt strangely calm. This wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration, restoring balance, dignity, and truth to a relationship that had become dangerously one-sided. I pulled into the driveway of the beautiful home I had helped provide, admiring the manicured lawn and elegant facade. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel pride in what my hard work had helped create. Then I slipped the bank's letter into their mailbox, alongside a note of my own. The letter from the bank explained that their mortgage payments were significantly delinquent, as the supplementary payments had been permanently discontinued. My note was simpler. Lisa and Daniel, for 7 years I have contributed $2,450 monthly toward your mortgage. That ends today. I have decided to invest in my own future instead. You once had a mother who would have given you everything. Now you have one who finally understands her own worth. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. As I drove away, my phone began to ring. Lisa's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it and continued driving, for once not rushing to respond to her needs. This wasn't the end of my relationship with my daughter or my grandchildren. At least I hoped not. But it was the end of an unhealthy pattern that had dominated too many years of my life. Whatever came next would be on new terms, with boundaries that honored both of us. My sister was waiting, the Arizona sunshine was calling, and for the first time in forever, I was looking forward to tomorrow. My phone didn't stop ringing for the entire drive home. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, I had 17 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from Lisa or Daniel. I silenced my phone, tucked it into my purse, and walked inside with my shoulders straight for the first time in years. Mrs. Abernathy from next door was watering the shared plants in our hallway. She gave me a curious look as I approached my door. "Everything all right, Eleanor? You're practically glowing." I smiled as I fished for my keys. "You know what, Caroline? For the first time in a long while, I think it is." Inside my small but immaculate one-bedroom apartment, I kicked off my sensible nursing shoes and poured myself a glass of the expensive Cabernet I'd been saving for a special occasion. Thomas and I had bought it on our 25th anniversary, planning to open it on our 30th. He didn't make it to that milestone, and somehow, I could never bring myself to drink it alone. But tonight felt right. Tonight, I wasn't alone. I was standing with my younger self, the Eleanor who had dreams beyond motherhood, the woman Thomas had fallen in love with because of her fierce independence. I raised my glass to the framed photo of Thomas on the mantel. "You always said I was too soft on her," I whispered. "Looks like I finally took your advice." As I savored the rich wine, I pulled out a leather-bound notebook from my bedside drawer. It was time to make plans. Real ones. Not the vague, someday dreams I'd been pushing aside for years while I funneled my resources elsewhere. My phone buzzed. Again, this time with a text from Charlotte. "Made up the guest room. Blue walls just like you always wanted. Can't wait to have you here, sis." I smiled, remembering how I'd always told her that when I retired, I wanted a room with walls the color of the ocean. She'd remembered that small detail all these years. Just as I was about to reply, my doorbell rang. The harsh, insistent buzz was followed by pounding that rattled the frame. "Mom!" Lisa's voice carried through the door. "I know you're in there. Open this door right now." I took another deliberate sip of wine, letting the pounding continue for a moment. Then I smoothed my cardigan, stood up, and opened the door. Lisa burst into the apartment, her face flushed with anger, waving the bank letter in her hand. Daniel loomed behind her, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and indignation. "What the hell is this?" Lisa demanded, thrusting the paper toward me. "Some kind of sick joke?" I regarded her calmly. "It's a notice from the bank, Lisa. I'd think that would be obvious." "You canceled the mortgage payment," she nearly shrieked, "without any warning. Do you have any idea what this will do to our credit score?" I moved back to my armchair and sat down, gesture for them to take the sofa if they wished. They remained standing, too agitated to sit. "I've been making those payments for 7 years, I said evenly. "That's 84 consecutive months of financial support on top of the down payment. I believe that constitutes more than fair warning." Daniel stepped forward then, assuming what I recognized as his courtroom posture. "Eleanor, you made a commitment to help us. You can't just arbitrarily decide to stop. There are legal implications here." I raised an eyebrow. "Legal implications? Please, Daniel, enlighten me. Is there a contract stating I'm obligated to pay another person's mortgage indefinitely? Did I sign something to that effect?" He faltered, and I pressed on. "I offered to help until you were financially stable. You drive matching luxury SUVs. You renovated your kitchen last year for $60,000. You took the children to Europe for spring break. I'd say financial stability has been achieved, wouldn't you?" Lisa's expression shifted from anger to calculation. It was a look I recognized from her teenage years when she was trying to manipulate her way out of trouble. "Mom," she said, softening her tone, "we know you've done so much for us, and we're grateful, really. But we've built our lives around certain financial expectations. The trust fund doesn't mature until next year. If you could just continue until then. Like you continued including me in family gatherings? I interrupted. Like you continued showing basic respect for the mother who has supported you financially well into your 30s? Lisa had the grace to look momentarily ashamed, but Daniel jumped in before she could respond. This is emotional blackmail, Eleanor. You're punishing Lisa because your feelings are hurt. That's not fair to the children. At the mention of my grandchildren, I set down my wine glass a bit too firmly. Don't you dare bring Adam and Sophia into this, I said, my voice low but intense. This has nothing to do with them. I've tried to be present in their lives at every opportunity, only to be told my working-class background and practical gift-giving are somehow detrimental to their development. We never said that, Lisa protested weakly. You didn't have to say it, Lisa. You showed it in 100 different ways. When I offered to teach Sophia how to sew and you said, we'd prefer she focus on activities with more modern relevance. When I tried to help Adam with his science project and you hired a tutor instead because, in your words, education has changed since your day, Mom. I stood up, suddenly needing to move. Do you know what I heard at work yesterday? One of my colleagues is taking her grandchildren camping this weekend. All 3 generations together, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. When was the last time you allowed me that kind of natural, unstructured time with Adam and Sophia? Lisa. And Daniel exchanged uncomfortable glances. That's different, Lisa muttered. Patricia and William know how to interact with children in a way that what? I challenged. In a way that doesn't remind you of where you came from? In a way that fits better with the image you're trying to project to your high country club friends? Lisa flinched at the accuracy of my assessment. Daniel put a protective arm around her shoulders. Look, he said, his tone more conciliatory. I think we all need to take a step back here. Eleanor, clearly you're upset, and we should have been more sensitive to your feelings. But making a drastic financial decision out of emotional reactivity isn't the answer. I laughed then, a genuine laugh that seemed to startle them both. That's what you think this is? An emotional reaction? Daniel, I've been subsidizing your lifestyle for nearly a decade while postponing my own retirement, working extra shifts that leave me so exhausted I sometimes fall asleep driving home. This isn't a temper tantrum. It's a long overdue correction. Ah. I walked to my small desk and pulled out a folder, handing it to Lisa. This is a record of every payment I've made toward your mortgage. The total comes to $205,800, not including the $75,000 I contributed to the down payment. I've also included a spreadsheet showing what that money could have earned if invested in a modest retirement account over the same period. Lisa stared at the numbers, her face paling slightly. Mom, we never asked you to sacrifice your retirement for us. No, I agreed. You never asked. You just expected, then accepted, then demanded, and finally took for granted. Daniel was scanning the figures, his lawyer's mind clearly assessing potential arguments. Finally, he closed the folder with a sigh. What do you want, Eleanor? He asked bluntly. If this is a negotiation, let's get to the terms. I was struck by how transactional his worldview was, as if every human relationship could be reduced to a contract with clearly defined benefits for each party. This isn't a negotiation, I said quietly. It's a boundary. I'm no longer willing to subsidize a lifestyle that doesn't include a place for me beyond financial contribution. The decision has been made. Lisa's anger returned, her voice rising. So, that's it? After everything we've been through as a family, you're just cutting us off because we didn't invite you to one Thanksgiving dinner? It wasn't just one dinner, Lisa, I replied, feeling suddenly tired. It was a pattern of increasing exclusion and diminishing respect that culminated in that moment on your doorstep. And no, I'm not cutting you off. I'm simply redirecting my financial resources toward my own needs. There's a difference. What about the children? Lisa demanded. You're their grandmother. Don't you care what happens to them if we lose the house? The emotional manipulation was so blatant I almost admired its audacity. You won't lose the house unless you choose to, I pointed out. You and Daniel earn more than enough to cover the mortgage. It might mean fewer European vacations or waiting another year for the pool you've been planning, but Adam and Sophia will still have a roof over their heads. Lisa's next words cut deeper than she could possibly know. If that's your attitude, maybe it's better if you don't see the children for a while, she said coldly. Until you come to your senses about all this. Even Daniel looked shocked at this escalation. Lisa, he murmured, let's not make threats we'll regret. But she shook her head, doubling down. No, I mean it. If Mom doesn't care enough about her grandchildren's stability to continue helping us, then maybe she doesn't deserve to be in their lives. The room fell silent. I felt an odd calm descend over me, like the eye of a hurricane. This was who my daughter had become, someone who would use children as pawns in an emotional power play, someone who confused financial support with love and control with care. Lisa, I said softly, when you were 7 years old, you broke my favorite teacup, the one that belonged to your grandmother. Do you remember what happened next? She frowned at the apparent non sequitur. What does that have to do with anything? You were so afraid I would be angry that you hid the pieces under your bed. When I found them, do you remember what I said? A flicker of memory crossed her face. You said people are more important than things. Exactly. And I still believe that. Your children, my grandchildren, are infinitely more precious than money or houses or status. If you're willing to sever their relationship with their grandmother over a mortgage payment, then I've failed you in ways far more profound than I realized. Lisa looked away, the first hint of genuine shame crossing her features. I think you should both leave now, I continued, walking toward the door. When you're ready to have a conversation that doesn't involve financial ultimatums or threats about the children, you know where to find me. Daniel hesitated, then gently guided Lisa toward the door. At the threshold, he paused and looked back at me. For what it's worth, Eleanor, I think there's been fault on both sides here. We could have been more appreciative, certainly. But this scorched earth approach isn't going to heal anything. I met his gaze steadily. Sometimes, Daniel, the forest needs to burn before new growth can begin. After they left, I sat in the sudden silence of my apartment, waiting for the wave of regret or guilt to crash over me. It never came. Instead, I felt a growing certainty that I had finally done the right thing. Not just for myself, but for Lisa, too. Some lessons can only be learned through consequence. I picked up my phone and saw yet another missed call, but this one wasn't from Lisa or Daniel. It was from Patricia, Daniel's mother. Curious despite myself, I listened to the voicemail. Eleanor, her crisp voice began. I've just heard the most disturbing news from Lisa. I must say I'm shocked by your behavior. Financial commitments to family should be honored, regardless of personal feelings. Daniel's father and I have always taught him the importance of family loyalty. Perhaps we should discuss this situation like civilized people. Call me back. I deleted the message without a second thought. Of course, Patricia would see it that way. She had never had to worry about retirement funds or working extra shifts. Her concept of family loyalty conveniently aligned with her financial interests. Tomorrow, I would change my phone number. Tonight, I had plans to make. I returned to my notebook, mapping out a timeline for the next few months. I would work through December to tie up loose ends at the hospital and nursing home. January would be for selling furniture and donating items I no longer needed. By February, I could be settled in Arizona with Charlotte, beginning the next chapter. As I wrote, I realized I was smiling. Not the practiced smile I'd worn for years, the one that reassured patience, smoothed over Lisa's ingratitude, and masked my growing exhaustion, but a genuine expression of hope. My doorbell rang again just after 9. This time, I checked the peephole before opening it. Standing in the hallway was Sophia, my 12-year-old granddaughter, clutching her backpack. Adam, 15 and lanky, stood slightly behind her, looking uncomfortable. I opened the door immediately. Sophia? Adam? What are you doing here? How did you get here? Sophia rushed forward to hug me, while Adam hung back, studying the carpet pattern with intense interest. We took an Uber, Sophia explained, her voice muffled against my cardigan. Mom and Dad came home fighting about money and the mortgage, and then Mom said we wouldn't be seeing you anymore because you were being selfish and cruel. My heart sank. Oh, sweetheart. But that doesn't make any sense, she continued, pulling back to look at me with earnest blue eyes so like her grandfather's. You're the least selfish person I know. Remember when you stayed up all night making my costume for the school play? Or when you taught me how to make bread from scratch when everyone else's grandparents just bought them new phones? Adam finally spoke, his voice cracking slightly. And you came to my chess tournament when Dad was too busy, even though you had to switch shifts at the hospital. He paused, then added quietly, You were the only one who clapped when I got third place. I ushered them inside, fighting back tears. You shouldn't have come here without telling your parents. They'll be worried sick. We texted them from the Uber, Adam said. Dad's on his way to pick us up. We wanted to see you, to make sure you were okay. I guided them to the sofa, noticing how they immediately relaxed in my small apartment. They'd always seemed more at ease here than in their own perfectly decorated rooms. I'm more than okay, I assured them. Your grandmother is finally taking care of herself, that's all. Sophia frowned. But Mom said you're taking away our house. I sighed, trying to find age-appropriate words for a complicated situation. I'm not taking away anything that belongs to your parents. I'm simply not giving extra help anymore. There's a big difference. Is it because of Thanksgiving? Adam asked perceptively. Because you got uninvited? I was surprised by his awareness. You knew about that? He nodded. Mom told Grandma Patricia right in front of us. She said you'd be disappointed, but you'd get over it. The casual cruelty of it stung afresh. It's not just about Thanksgiving, I explained. It's about recognizing when a relationship has become unbalanced in a way that isn't healthy for anyone. Sophia looked confused, but Adam nodded slowly. Like when I kept lending Jake my video games even though he never returned them and started expecting me to just give him stuff, he said. You told me sometimes you have to set boundaries with people you care about. I smiled at him, touched that he remembered that conversation. Exactly like that. Sophia wasn't satisfied. But what's going to happen now? Will we still see you? Mom said, What your mother said came from a place of anger, I interrupted gently. Adults sometimes say things they don't mean when they're upset. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Daniel, looking harried and embarrassed. I'm so sorry about this, Eleanor, he said as the children gathered their things. They just took off before we could stop them. It's fine, I assured him. I'm glad they came. As the children hugged me goodbye, I whispered to each of them that I loved them and always would, regardless of what happened between the adults in the family. Adam hesitated at the door. Grandma, are you really moving to Arizona? News traveled fast. I'm considering it, I admitted. Your great-aunt Charlotte has invited me to stay with her. But that's so far away, Sophia protested, her eyes filling with tears. Daniel stepped in, his tone surprisingly gentle. Your grandmother deserves to make her own choices, just like anyone else. If Arizona is what she wants, we should support that. I looked at him with newfound respect. Perhaps there was hope for understanding after all. After they left, I returned to my planning notebook, adding a new page titled Grandchildren. Whatever happened with Lisa, I was determined to maintain my relationship with Adam and Sophia. They deserved better than to become collateral damage in an adult conflict. Just before midnight, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from Lisa and consisted of only 4 words. "We need to talk." I didn't respond immediately. There. Would be time for talking tomorrow. Tonight was for me. For the first dreamless, peaceful sleep I'd had in years, unburdened by financial stress or the weight of unbalanced expectations. As I drifted off, I thought about something Thomas used to say when faced with difficult decisions. The right path isn't always the easiest one, Ellie, but your feet know the way. For the first time since his death, I truly believed my feet were finding their proper path again. The next morning, Thanksgiving Day, I woke early and made myself a proper breakfast, something I rarely had time for with my usual hectic schedule. As I savored each bite of perfectly cooked omelet, I realized how many small pleasures I'd been denying myself in service to others. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Lisa, all from late last night after I'd gone to sleep. There was also a text from Charlotte. "Weather report says 75 and sunny here today. Just saying." I smiled and sent back a photo of my gray, drizzly view with the caption, "Message received. Packing extra sunscreen." Just as I was cleaning up the breakfast dishes, someone knocked on my door, a softer, more hesitant knock than Lisa's demanding pounding from the previous evening. When I opened it, I found Patricia standing there, immaculately dressed as always in a cashmere sweater set and pearls, holding a small gift bag. "Eleanor," she said with a tight smile. "I hope I'm not intruding. I thought perhaps we could have a chat, woman to woman." I hesitated, then stepped back to let her in. In all the years our children had been married, Patricia had never once visited my apartment. She glanced around with barely concealed assessment, her eyes lingering on my modest furnishings. "It's very cozy," she offered, which from Patricia was practically an insult. "You've made the most of the space." "Thank you," I replied, dryly. "Would you like some coffee?" She nodded, and I busied myself in the kitchenette while she perched uncomfortably on the edge of my sofa, still clutching her gift bag. "I brought you a little something," she said, extending the bag toward me when I returned with 2 mugs. "Just a token for the holiday." Inside was an expensive-looking silk scarf in a shade of green I would never wear. It was exactly the kind of impersonal gift one gives to a distant acquaintance or to someone whose favor one is attempting to curry. "It's lovely," I lied, setting it aside. "What can I do for you, Patricia?" She took a delicate sip of coffee, then set the mug down, with determination. "I'll be direct, Eleanor. This situation with the mortgage is causing considerable distress to my son and his family. Daniel explained to me that there may have been some misunderstandings that led to your decision." "Did he?" I kept my tone neutral. "Yes," she continued, gaining confidence. "He mentioned you felt underappreciated, which is perfectly understandable. Mothers often feel their sacrifices go unnoticed." I waited, letting her fill the silence. "The thing is, Eleanor, family dynamics can be so complicated. Lisa is young and perhaps hasn't fully grasped the extent of your contributions, but cutting off financial support so abruptly seems rather extreme, don't you think?" I considered my response carefully. "What would you have done in my position, Patricia?" She seemed taken aback by the question. "Well, I suppose I would have expressed my feelings more directly before taking such drastic measures." "I see. And when you express your feelings to Lisa and Daniel, they listen respectfully and adjust their behavior accordingly?" Patricia shifted uncomfortably. "They're very considerate of our perspective, yes." "That hasn't been my experience," I said simply. She tried a different tack. "Eleanor, I understand you've worked very hard your entire life. Nursing is such a Noble profession. The pause before noble spoke volumes about her actual opinion of my career. But surely you can appreciate that Lisa and Daniel have created a certain lifestyle for the children, one that provides them with opportunities and stability. A lifestyle built on my financial support, I pointed out. Support that was meant to be temporary, not permanent. Patricia sighed dramatically. Yes, well, plans change. Commitments evolve. That's part of being a family, isn't it? Adapting to changing circumstances? I couldn't help but laugh. How convenient that the adaptation always seems to flow in one direction, from my bank account to theirs. Her expression hardened slightly. There's no need to be crude about money, Eleanor. On the contrary, I think we need to be very explicit about money. It's been the unspoken third party in my relationship with Lisa and Daniel for far too long. I leaned forward. Did you know I've been postponing necessary dental work because the monthly mortgage payment I've been making leaves me with too little for proper health care? Patricia looked genuinely surprised. I had no idea. Surely Lisa would have. Lisa never asked, I interrupted, and I never complained. That was my mistake, and one I'm correcting now. Patricia set down her barely touched coffee and reached for her handbag. I can see this conversation isn't going to be productive. I had hoped we could reach some kind of understanding. I stood as she did. What exactly did you hope to accomplish here, Patricia? Did you think you could persuade me to continue subsidizing a lifestyle that excludes me, except when financial contribution is required? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she adjusted her silk scarf and said, I suppose we come from different worlds, Eleanor. In my family, we've always understood that those with more help, those with less. It's the natural order of things. And in that worldview, I will always be the one with less, I observed. The one expected to be grateful for whatever scraps of inclusion fall from the table. Patricia flushed. That's an unfair characterization. Is it? Then tell me, when was the last time you contributed financially to Lisa and Daniel's household? When did you last make a mortgage payment or cover childcare costs? She looked affronted. William and I give them lovely gifts. The children's education funds are well established. We contribute in our way. Yes, you give visible, prestigious gifts that enhance your image as generous grandparents, while I quietly keep the lights on. And somehow your contributions are celebrated while mine are expected. Patricia moved toward the door, clearly eager to escape. I can see we have fundamentally different perspectives on family obligation, Eleanor. Not obligation, Patricia. Respect. That's what this is about. She paused with her hand on the doorknob. You know, despite what you may think, I've always admired your work ethic. Not everyone could do what you've done, raising Lisa alone after Thomas passed. It was as close to a genuine compliment as she'd ever given me. I nodded in acknowledgement. Happy Thanksgiving, Patricia. After she left, I sat quietly, reflecting on our conversation. Patricia had offered a window into a worldview I would never share, one where hierarchy was natural and some family members were inherently more valuable than others. No wonder Lisa and Daniel had absorbed those attitudes. They'd been marinating in them for years. My phone chimed with another text from Lisa. The children are upset. We need to fix this. Coming over at 2. I typed back, I have plans at 2. Available at 4. I didn't actually have plans, but I needed to establish that my time was valuable and my schedule mattered. Small boundaries, but meaningful ones. At precisely 4 o'clock, Lisa arrived alone. Her eyes were puffy from crying, and she looked younger somehow, more vulnerable than she had the previous day. The kids are with Dad, she said as she stepped inside. They're really shaken up by all this. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied genuinely. Children shouldn't be burdened with adult problems. Lisa sank onto the sofa, looking exhausted. Mom, what are we doing? How did we get here? I sat across from her. I think you know the answer to that, Lisa. She stared at her hands. Patricia came to see you. Yes. What did she say? I considered the question. She expressed concern about the impact my decision would have on your family's lifestyle. Lisa winced. That sounds like her. She took a deep breath. Look, Mom, I know things haven't been great between us lately. I can see now that we've been taking you for granted. Yes, you have, I agreed quietly. But this solution? Cutting off the mortgage payments without warning, threatening to move to Arizona. It feels so extreme. Couldn't we have talked about this first? Worked something out? I studied my daughter, trying to see past the woman she'd become to the girl I had raised. Lisa, I've been trying to talk to you for years. Every time I expressed hurt over being excluded or suggested I might need to scale back my financial support, you dismissed my concerns or changed the subject. That's not fair, she protested. I listened to you. When was the last time you asked about my life? My health? My dreams for the future? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to provide an example. You know, I continued, gently, when your father died, he left a small life insurance policy. Not much, but enough that I could have taken some time to grieve properly. Instead, I went back to work after 2 weeks because your tuition payment was due. Lisa looked down. I didn't know that. You never asked. You were young, and I wanted to protect you from financial worries. That was my choice, and I don't regret it. But somewhere along the way, my protection became expectation, and your gratitude became entitlement. Tears filled her eyes. So what now? You just cut me off? Move away? Punish me forever for being selfish? I shook my head. This isn't punishment, Lisa. It's consequence. And more importantly, it's me finally prioritizing my own well-being. By leaving? She challenged, a flash of the previous day's anger returning. By creating a life that doesn't revolve around supporting yours, I corrected. That might include moving to Arizona, yes. It might include travel, new hobbies, new friendships, things I've put on hold for decades. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, in a smaller voice than I'd heard from her in years, What? About us? What about your relationship with Adam and Sophia? That depends largely on you, I told her honestly. If you choose to use the children as leverage to manipulate me, as you threatened yesterday, then yes, our relationship will suffer. But that wouldn't be my choice. She had the grace to look ashamed. I shouldn't have said that. I was angry and scared. I understand that, but it revealed something important about how you view family relationships as transactional rather than unconditional. Lisa twisted her wedding ring nervously. Daniel and I talked a lot last night. He pointed out some things I hadn't wanted to see, about how I've been treating you, about how I've allowed his parents to overshadow you because it was easier than standing up to them. This was more self-awareness than I'd expected. That couldn't have been an easy conversation. She shook her head. It wasn't. He also showed me the spreadsheet you gave him, with all the payments you've made. Mom, I had no idea it was that much money. When you offered to help with the mortgage, I thought it was something you could easily afford. Based on what? I asked, genuinely curious. Lisa shrugged helplessly. I don't know. I guess I never really thought about your finances. You always seemed to manage. I managed by working 60-hour weeks well into my 60s, I said. By living in this small apartment instead of somewhere more comfortable. By driving the same car for 15 years. By making sacrifices you never saw because I deliberately kept them from you. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Mom. I've been horrible to you. Part of me wanted to rush to comfort her, to say it wasn't that bad. to take on the maternal role of emotional caretaker as I'd always done. But that pattern was exactly what had brought us here. Yes, I said simply. At times, you have been. And I've enabled it by never holding you accountable. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a gesture so reminiscent of her childhood that my heart ached. So what happens now? With the house, I mean. That's for you and Daniel to figure out. You have 2 good incomes. The mortgage is substantial but not beyond your means if you adjust some spending habits. And us? Our relationship? I considered my answer carefully. That depends on whether you're willing to build something new, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. Lisa nodded slowly. I want that. I really do. She hesitated, then added, Does this mean you're still moving to Arizona? I don't know yet, I answered honestly. Charlotte's invitation gives me options I haven't had before. I need time to figure out what I truly want, now that I'm free to choose. Is there? Lisa hesitated, then pushed forward. Is there anything I can do to make amends, to start rebuilding trust? It was the first question she'd asked that wasn't ultimately about her own interests, and it gave me a flicker of hope. You can start by respecting my decision about the mortgage without further attempts to change my mind, I suggested. And perhaps we could establish a regular time for Adam and Sophia to visit me, without conditions or cancellations. Lisa nodded, eagerly. Of course, they'd love that. They talk about you all the time, you know. Sophia's been teaching her friends how to make your special bread. This was news to me. Has she? Yes. And Adam has that chess strategy book you gave him. Practically memorized. They adore you, Mom. For the first time in our conversation, I felt my eyes grow moist. I'm glad to hear that. Lisa hesitated, then asked, What about Thanksgiving? It's not too late. We could still have dinner together. Daniel's parents would understand. I shook my head. Not this year. I need some space, and honestly, so do you. This is a chance for you to navigate a holiday without financial rescue or emotional caretaking from me. She looked disappointed but nodded. I understand. As she prepared to leave, she paused at the door. Mom, for what it's worth, I'm really proud of you. Standing up for yourself like this. It couldn't have been easy. I smiled. It wasn't, but it was necessary. After she left, I returned to my planning notebook, making a few adjustments to my timeline. I wasn't sure yet if Arizona was in my future, but for the first time in decades, the possibilities felt wide open. Whatever came next would be my choice, not dictated by obligation, or guilt, or the expectations of others. That evening, I received a text message with a photo attached. It showed Adam and Sophia at their Thanksgiving table, smiling next to an empty chair with a handwritten sign that read, Reserved for Grandma Eleanor, whenever she's ready. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Real healing would take time, consistent effort, and probably some backsliding along the way. But it was a beginning, one built on newfound respect rather than financial obligation. I saved the photo, then texted back a simple heart emoji. Sometimes the smallest gestures speak volumes. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter from Daniel's law firm. For a moment, my heart sank. Was he planning to sue me after all, despite the apparent progress in our family dynamics? With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside was a legal document transferring a portion of ownership of their house to me, exactly equivalent to the percentage my contributions had covered over the years, along with a personal note from Daniel. Eleanor, it read, this should have been done years ago. Your investment in our home deserves formal recognition. This doesn't obligate you to continue payments, but it does ensure that your past contributions are properly acknowledged. With respect and gratitude, Daniel. I sat heavily in my chair, the document in my lap. It wasn't about the money or the property value, it was about recognition. After years of invisible support, my contributions had finally been seen and formally acknowledged. That same afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor at the hospital during my shift, Dr. Wilson, the chief of pediatric medicine, and someone I'd worked alongside for nearly 2 decades. "Eleanor, do you have a minute?" Dr. Wilson asked, gesturing toward an empty consultation room. I followed him, curious. In all my years at the hospital, he had rarely sought me out directly. Our interactions had been mainly limited to staff meetings and the occasional hallway consultation about a difficult patient. "Please, sit," he said, closing the door behind us. "I wanted to speak with you about your retirement plans." I raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware I had officially announced anything." He smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. "Hospital grapevine. Apparently you mentioned Arizona to Nancy in radiology, and by lunchtime, half the staff was discussing your imminent departure." I sighed. Hospitals were worse than small towns when it came to gossip. "I'm considering several options," I admitted. "Arizona is one possibility, but nothing's definite yet." Dr. Wilson nodded, then leaned forward slightly. "Eleanor, I'll be direct. We don't want to lose you." The pediatric department's patient satisfaction scores have consistently been highest for the families you work with. Your institutional knowledge is irreplaceable. I was surprised by the praise. While I'd always received positive evaluations, the hospital administration rarely acknowledged individual contributions so explicitly. "That's kind of you to say, but I've been here for 27 years. It might be time for new energy, new perspectives." "Or," he countered, "it might be time for your experience to be properly valued." He slid a folder across the table. "This is a proposal the board and I have been discussing. We'd like to create a new position, pediatric nursing coordinator and family liaison. Fewer direct floor hours, more mentoring of younger staff, and developing our family support programs." I opened the folder, my eyes widening at the salary. Figure, nearly double my current compensation. "This is very generous," I said carefully, "but I suspect it's not within the usual pay scale for nursing staff." Dr. Wilson shrugged. "It's a specialized position that leverages your unique skill set. And frankly, it's less than it would cost us to replace you and train someone new, especially considering the impact on patient care during that transition." I studied him, trying to understand the timing. "Why now? I've been here for decades, without any similar offer." He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Sometimes it takes the threat of losing something valuable to make you recognize its worth." He paused. "And if I'm being completely honest, the healthcare landscape is changing. Patient experience metrics now directly impact hospital funding. Your rapport with families has become a financial asset." I appreciated his candor. "I see. And the reduced floor hours?" "We recognize you might be ready to scale back the physical demands of the job. This position would tap your expertise while being more sustainable long-term." I closed the folder, my mind racing. "I'll need time to consider this." "Of course," he agreed. "Take a couple of weeks." "But Eleanor—" He hesitated, then continued, in a more personal tone, "I've watched you put everyone else first for as long as I've known you. Maybe it's time to consider what's best for you." As I left the consultation room, clutching the folder, I felt oddly unsettled. The offer was generous, certainly more recognition than I'd ever expected from the hospital. But something about it echoed my situation with Lisa. Value belatedly recognized only when withdrawal became a threat. I had just reached the nurses' station when my phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. "Any progress on those Arizona plans? Found a pottery studio near me that offers senior discounts on classes. Just saying." I smiled at her gentle prodding. Charlotte had been sending similar messages daily. little glimpses of the life that could be waiting for me in Arizona. Her latest temptation touched on something she knew I'd always wanted to try. In college, I'd taken one semester of ceramics and had shown a natural aptitude for it. Thomas had bought me a small pottery wheel for our 5th anniversary, but the demands of work and raising Lisa had soon relegated it to the basement, where it gathered dust until I eventually sold it during a particularly tight financial month. At the end of my shift, I drove home with the job offer weighing on my mind. The parking lot at my apartment complex was unusually full, forcing me to park on the street. As I approached my building, I noticed a familiar SUV in the visitor's spot, Daniel's vehicle. I found him sitting on the steps outside my door, a large portfolio case beside him. "Daniel," I greeted him, unable to hide my surprise. "I wasn't expecting you." He stood up, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I hope it's okay that I stopped by without calling first. There's something I wanted to show you in person." I unlocked my door and invited him in, curious about what could bring my usually composed son-in-law to my doorstep looking so unsettled. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Tea?" "Water would be fine, thanks," he said, carefully placing the portfolio on my coffee table. When I returned with 2 glasses, he had opened the case to reveal architectural renderings. "What's this?" I asked, sitting beside him. Daniel took a deep breath. "After our conversation about the mortgage, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About contributions, about family, about legacy." He gestured to the drawings. "These are plans for converting our basement into a private in-law suite. Separate entrance, full kitchenette, accessible bathroom, everything designed for comfort and independence." I stared at the detailed plans, speechless. "It would be your space," he continued quickly, "completely yours with no obligations or expectations. A place where you could be as involved or as private as you choose." He flipped to another page showing an outdoor area. "There's even a small patio space where you could have a garden or whatever you wanted." When I finally found my voice, it came out more sharply than I intended. "Daniel, what exactly are you proposing here?" He looked startled by my tone. We thought you might consider living with us instead of moving to Arizona. On your terms, of course. No more mortgage payments or financial expectations. This would be our investment, our way of creating a place for you in our lives." I studied him carefully. And this sudden desire to have me close by, it wouldn't have anything to do with childcare or other practical support? Daniel flushed slightly. "I won't pretend there wouldn't be mutual benefits. Yes, having you nearby would make certain logistics easier with the kids. But Eleanor, this isn't about exploiting your time or energy. It's about acknowledging that family should support each other in all directions, not just from you to us." I stood up and walked to the window, needing space to think. The offer was tempting in many ways. I loved my grandchildren fiercely and had always wished for more time with them. And the suite looked beautiful, far more comfortable than my current apartment. But something felt off. The timing, coming so soon after I'd finally established boundaries, seemed suspect. "What does Lisa think about this?" I asked, turning back to face him. Daniel hesitated, which told me everything. "She doesn't know, does she?" I realized. "This is your initiative, not hers." He sighed. "She knows I'm exploring options, but she hasn't seen the specific plans yet. I wanted to make sure you were interested before getting her hopes up." "Or," I suggested gently, "you were afraid she would object, and it was easier to present both of us with a fait accompli." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen many times. "Lisa is complicated when it comes to you. She admires you tremendously, but also resents living in your shadow sometimes. Your work ethic, your sacrifices, they created a standard she feels she can never match." This was a perspective I'd never considered. I never meant to create that kind of pressure. "Of course not," he agreed. But children often form their own narratives about their parents, just as parents do about their children. Sometimes these narratives need updating. I returned to the sofa and looked again at the beautiful plans he'd brought. Daniel, I appreciate the thought and effort that went into this. Truly. But I can't consider moving into your home without Lisa's enthusiastic support. That would create a dynamic destined for resentment and conflict. He nodded slowly. I understand. But will you at least keep it as an option? Let me talk to Lisa properly, show her the plans. I can do that, I conceded. But Daniel, I need you to understand something important. My decision about where to live isn't just about proximity to family or comfort or convenience. It's about writing a new chapter for myself, one where I'm the main character, not just a supporting role in someone else's story. Daniel studied me with new respect. I never thought about it that way. You've always seemed so content in your supporting role. Not content, I corrected. Resigned. There's a difference. As he gathered up the portfolio to leave, Daniel paused. Lisa and I have been discussing our financial situation. We've worked out how to manage the mortgage on our own. It's tight, but doable with some adjustments to our spending. I'm glad to hear that. The thing is, Eleanor, he continued hesitantly, I always thought of myself as a good provider, someone who took care of his family. Finding out how much we'd been depending on you, it was humbling. And a little embarrassing, if I'm being honest. I appreciated his candor. Financial management is something many people struggle with, especially when they're used to a certain lifestyle. We're making changes, he assured me. Smaller ones. Than you might think necessary, but sustainable ones. I canceled my country club membership. Lisa is selling her second car. We're keeping the kids in their private school, but cutting back on extracurriculars. I nodded, recognizing the effort these changes represented for them, even if they seemed modest from my perspective. One more thing, Daniel said at the door. Lisa mentioned you might be considering a job offer from the hospital? News traveled. Fast. Dr. Wilson presented an opportunity today. I'm still processing it. Whatever you decide, Arizona, the hospital job, something else entirely, I hope you'll still be part of our lives. The kids need you, and despite everything, Lisa does too. After he left, I sat for a long time with the competing offers before me. Charlotte's Arizona sunshine, the hospital's professional recognition, Daniel's family integration. Each represented a different vision of my future, a different Eleanor I could become. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Ms. Walsh? This is Bridget Miller from Sunset Realty. I'm calling about the property you inquired about on Lakeside Drive. I frowned, confused. I'm sorry, I haven't inquired about any properties. There was a pause, then. Oh, my apologies. I received your name and number from a Patricia Harrington. She said you might be interested in a rental property that's just become available in our senior living community. I nearly dropped the phone. Patricia, Daniel's mother, was shopping for retirement homes for me. Without my knowledge or consent. Ms. Miller, I appreciate the call, but I'm not currently in the market for senior housing, and in the future, I'd prefer to make my own inquiries about living arrangements. After ending the call, I sat fuming. The audacity of Patricia inserting herself into my housing decisions was breathtaking. What troubled me more was wondering how much Daniel and Lisa knew about her interference. Was the in-law suite idea a genuine offer, or merely a more palatable alternative to the retirement community Patricia had selected? I needed clarity and distance to sort through these competing agendas. On impulse, I booked a flight to Arizona for the following weekend. A short visit with Charlotte might help put things in perspective. The morning of my departure, I received a text from Lisa. Mom, heard you're going to Arizona. We need to talk before you make any decisions. Please call me. I texted back. Taking a short trip to visit Charlotte, not making permanent decisions. Yet. We'll call when I return. Her response was immediate. At least let us drive you to the airport. I considered refusing, but decided that would be petty. That would be nice. Flight leaves at 11:20. Lisa and the children picked me up precisely on time, something of a minor miracle given their usually casual approach to punctuality. Adam helped load my small suitcase into the trunk while Sophia bombarded me with questions about Arizona. Will you see real cowboys, Grandma? Does Aunt Charlotte have horses? Can I visit you if you move there? Sophia? Lisa cautioned. Grandma's just visiting for a few days. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The drive to the airport was pleasantly normal. Adam describing his latest chess tournament, Sophia sharing gossip about her middle school, drama club, Lisa navigating traffic with her usual intensity. Nothing about their behavior suggested they knew about Patricia's maneuvering with the retirement community. At the terminal drop-off, Lisa surprised me by hopping out to help with my bag. As Adam and Sophia called their goodbyes from the car, she hesitated, then gave me a quick hug. Mom, I know things have been complicated between us lately, but whatever you decide, I want you to be happy. Really. The sincerity in her voice touched me. Thank you, Lisa. That means a lot. And, Mom? She added as I turned to leave. Daniel showed me the plans for the in-law suite. It was actually my idea originally. I just wasn't sure how to bring it up without it seeming like another way we were trying to use you. This revelation startled me. You suggested it? She nodded, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. After our talk about boundaries, I started thinking about what a healthier relationship between us might look like. One where we actually lived close enough to be family without the financial entanglement. I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation but finding none. We'll talk more when I get back, I promised. The flight to Arizona gave me time to reflect on these developments. Everyone, it seemed, had an opinion about what I should do next, where I should live, how I should spend my time, what role I should play in the remaining chapters of my life. The pressure felt overwhelming, even if it came from places of genuine concern. Charlotte met me at the Phoenix airport, her silver hair gleaming in the desert sunshine, her smile as warm as the air that enveloped me when I stepped outside. Well, look at you, she greeted me, pulling me into a hug. Finally visiting your favorite sister. You're my only sister, I reminded her with a laugh. Details, details, she dismissed with a wave of her turquoise-ringed hand. Charlotte had always been my opposite, spontaneous where I was practical, artistic where I was analytical, bold where I was cautious. Her condo, situated in a vibrant community on the outskirts of Scottsdale, was exactly what I would have expected. Airy, colorful, filled with art and plants and evidence of various creative projects in progress. Tour later, she announced, steering me toward the patio. Margaritas first. Doctor's orders. I raised an eyebrow. You're a retired art teacher, not a doctor. Fine. Teacher's orders then. Even more authoritative. As we sat beneath the shade of a massive old mesquite tree, sipping cold drinks and watching hummingbirds dart among the desert flowers, Charlotte listened patiently as I detailed the various options before me. So, let me get this straight, she said when I finished. You've got a lucrative job offer from the hospital, an invitation to live with Lisa and Daniel in a custom-designed space, and of course, the standing offer to move in with your stunningly youthful and charming sister, in paradise. She gestured expansively at the desert landscape. Plus Patricia trying to stash you in a retirement village without your knowledge, which is not an option but certainly adds drama to the scenario. I smiled at her summary. That about covers it. And what do you want, Ellie? She asked. her tone softening. Not what makes the most practical sense, or what would please the most people. What do you want? I stared into my half-empty glass, realizing no one had asked me that question so directly in years, perhaps decades. I don't know, I admitted. I've spent so long making decisions based on others' needs that I'm not sure I remember how to choose based on my own desires. Charlotte reached over and squeezed my hand. Then that's your first task. Before you decide where to live, or what job to take, you need to reconnect with the Eleanor who exists beneath all those layers of responsibility and sacrifice. And how do I do that? Her eyes twinkled. I may have some ideas. Over the next 4 days, Charlotte orchestrated what she called Operation Eleanor Rediscovery. We started with the pottery class she'd mentioned, where I discovered my hands still remembered the feel of clay, the meditative rhythm of the wheel. We hiked in the desert at sunrise, the landscape transformed by golden light. We attended an outdoor concert where I surprised myself by dancing along with the crowd, something I hadn't done in public since my 20s. In the evenings, we sat on her patio talking for hours, reconstructing memories from our childhood, sharing secrets we'd kept from each other, laughing until tears streamed down our faces. It felt like rediscovering not just myself, but the sister bond that life's demands had sometimes pushed to the background. On my last night in Arizona, Charlotte presented me with a small wrapped package. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it and see." Inside was a beautiful handmade journal with a turquoise leather cover. "Turn to the first page," she instructed. There, in Charlotte's distinctive handwriting, was a single question. What would Eleanor do if she weren't afraid? "Your homework assignment," she explained. "Before you make any decisions, fill this journal. 1 page for each possibility you're considering, with complete honesty about what scares you and what excites you about each option." I hugged the journal to my chest, deeply touched by her insight. Thank you, Char, for everything. "You're welcome. And Ellie? Whatever you decide, remember that putting yourself first isn't selfish. It's necessary, like the oxygen masks on airplanes. You can't help anyone else if you're suffocating." The flight home gave me time to begin my journal assignment, starting with the Arizona option. I wrote honestly about the appeal of Charlotte's companionship, the beauty of the desert, the freedom from old patterns and expectations. But I also acknowledged my fears of being too far from my grandchildren as they grew up, of starting over completely at my age, of running away rather than resolving family dynamics. By the time my plane landed, I had filled several pages with reflections far more nuanced than the pro and con lists I might have made in the past. As I exited the secure area, I was surprised to find not just Lisa waiting for me, but Adam and Sophia as well, holding a hand-lettered sign that read, "Welcome home, Grandma." Their enthusiasm warmed my heart, even as I wondered what prompted this reception committee. "How was Arizona?" Lisa asked as we walked to the parking garage. "As wonderful as Charlotte promised?" "It was exactly what I needed," I replied, truthfully. A chance to step back and gain perspective. Sophia tugged at my sleeve. "Did you decide if you're moving there? Please say no." "Sophia," Lisa admonished, "that's Grandma's decision." I squeezed Sophia's hand. "I'm still thinking about all my options, sweetheart, but I promise your feelings matter to me." At the car, Lisa hesitated before opening the trunk. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you. While you were gone, Patricia called me. She mentioned reaching out to some retirement community on your behalf. So she did know." And Lisa's eyes flashed with an anger I rarely saw from her. And I told her in no uncertain terms that she had overstepped boundaries that weren't even in her territory to begin with. I may have used language that would not be appropriate to repeat in front of the children. I couldn't hide my surprise. "You confronted Patricia? but you've always been so careful to stay on her good side. Lisa helped me with my suitcase, avoiding my eyes. Yeah, well, maybe I'm learning that some relationships aren't worth the compromise, especially when they involve disrespecting my mother. In the car, Adam unexpectedly joined the conversation from the back seat. Grandpa William wasn't happy either. We were at their house when Mom called Grandma Patricia about it. He took the phone and told her she'd been unconscionably presumptuous. I turned to look at him, eyebrows raised. He did? Adam nodded solemnly. Then he apologized to Mom and said sometimes his wife forgets that money doesn't entitle her to manage other people's lives. This was a development I hadn't anticipated, dissension in the ranks of the previously united Harrington Front. Anyway, Lisa continued, I wanted you to know that whatever Patricia may have implied, Daniel and I had nothing to do with that retirement community nonsense. I believe you, I assured her. When we arrived at my apartment building, Lisa surprised me again. Would you mind if we came up for a bit? There's something I'd like to show you. Upstairs, while the children explored my small space with unusual interest, Lisa pulled a folder from her purse, similar to the one Daniel had brought with the in-law suite plans. What's this? I asked warily. Something different, she said. An alternative I thought you might want to consider. Inside were listings for small houses and garden apartments within a few miles of their home. Independent living spaces that would put me close to family without being under the same roof. Daniel's idea about the in-law suite is still on the table if you want it, Lisa explained. But I started thinking maybe you'd prefer your own place nearby, close enough for regular visits but with clear boundaries. I leafed through the listings, touched by the thoughtfulness behind them. Each property had features I'd mentioned liking. Over the years, a garden space, good natural light, a separate dining area for entertaining. Lisa, I don't know what to say. She sat beside me on the sofa. You don't have to say anything right now. These are just options to consider. Whatever you decide, Arizona, the hospital job, living near us, something else entirely, I want you to know we'll respect your choice. Even if it means seeing less of me? She hesitated, then nodded. Even then, although I hope it doesn't come to that, the kids would miss you terribly. So would I. Adam appeared at her elbow. Can we show her now? Lisa checked her watch. Yes, but we should get going if we're going to make it in time. Make it where? I asked, bewildered. It's a surprise, Sophia announced, practically vibrating with excitement. You have to come with us right now. Curious and a little apprehensive, I allowed them to hustle me back to the car. We drove across town to a part of the city I rarely visited, finally pulling up outside a modern building with large windows and a sign reading, New Horizons Community Center. What is this place? I asked as we walked inside. You'll see, Lisa said mysteriously, leading me down a corridor to a set of double doors. She checked her phone, then nodded to the children. Perfect timing. Adam pushed open the doors, revealing a large room filled with people of all ages. Tables displayed various arts and crafts, while the walls were covered with paintings and photographs. In the center of the room stood a pottery wheel, currently unoccupied, but clearly set up for a demonstration. Surprise! Several voices called as we entered. I recognized many of the faces, colleagues from the hospital, neighbors from my apartment, building, even some of the parents of former patients I'd cared for over the years. A banner stretched across the back wall. Eleanor Walsh Community Arts Initiative. Lisa guided me forward as people smiled and greeted me warmly. What is all this? I asked, completely confused. Dr. Wilson stepped forward. Eleanor, when you mentioned your interest in pottery during our discussion about the new position, it got me thinking. Our hospital has been looking for ways to expand our community outreach programs. Art therapy has shown remarkable benefits for pediatric patients and their families. A woman I didn't recognize continued the explanation. I'm Diane Lowell, the center's director. We've been seeking someone to lead an intergenerational arts program, someone with healthcare experience, natural artistic ability, and a gift for connecting with people of all ages. I looked back at Lisa, who was watching me with an unreadable expression. You knew about this? She nodded. Dr. Wilson called me while you were in Arizona. He wanted to know more about your interest in pottery. I remembered the wheel Dad bought you years ago, how you used to talk about getting back to it someday. We thought, Dr. Wilson added, this might be an interesting addition to the position we discussed, splitting your time between the hospital and community outreach. Of course, the center would provide all necessary training and certification in art therapy techniques. My mind raced, trying to process this unexpected development. But I'm not a professional artist. I've barely touched clay in decades. An older gentleman chuckled from nearby. That's what most of us said when we started volunteering here. But look now. He gestured to a display of ceramic bowls, each unique but bearing the unmistakable marks of beginners' hands. Eleanor, I'm Jim. I had a heart attack last year, and making these bowls has been better therapy than anything else the doctors prescribed. More people approached, each offering a personal story about how art had helped them through illness, grief, or recovery. Children from the pediatric ward I recognized. Parents whose hands I had held during difficult diagnoses. Elderly volunteers who spoke of finding purpose in creative expression. The position would be flexible, Dr. Wilson assured me. You could design your own schedule, balance clinical work with creative outreach, however works best for you. I turned to Lisa, still trying to make sense of her involvement. You arranged all this? She shook her head. I just provided information when Dr. Wilson called. The rest was already in motion. Apparently, you've touched more lives than you realized, Mom. People have been waiting for a chance to give something back to you. As if on cue, Sophia tugged me toward the pottery wheel. Will you show us, Grandma? Please? Before I could answer, the crowd parted, revealing Charlotte standing near the back of the room, a broad smile on her face. Charlotte, what are you doing here? You were in Arizona yesterday. She shrugged, eyes twinkling. Red-eye flight. Couldn't miss the big reveal, could I? You knew about this too? Let's just say I helped coordinate certain aspects from my end, she admitted. But the idea came from your hospital colleagues and Lisa. I just made sure the timing worked with your visit. I felt overwhelmed, not just by the surprise, but by the realization that so many people had collaborated to create this opportunity, tailored so perfectly to interests I had barely articulated, even to myself. As the initial shock wore off, I found myself drawn to the pottery wheel. Sitting down, I felt the cool clay between my fingers, remembering the rhythms and pressures needed to shape it. Under the watchful eyes of my family, friends, and colleagues, I began to work, my hands finding their own wisdom as a simple lump transformed into the beginning of a bowl. It wasn't perfect. Decades of absence from the craft showed in the slightly uneven walls and wobbling rim. But there was something, honest in its imperfection, something that spoke of new beginnings and rediscovered joy. Looking up, I caught Lisa's eye. She was watching me with an expression I hadn't seen in years, genuine pride untinged by competition or comparison. In that moment, something shifted between us, a rebalancing of our relationship that felt more profound than any conversation could have achieved. Later, as people mingled and enjoyed refreshments, Dr. Wilson approached me again. So, Eleanor, what do you think? Is this something you might be interested in exploring further? I looked around the room, at Charlotte chatting animatedly with some of my hospital colleagues, at Adam showing a younger child how to shape a simple pinch pot, at Lisa deep in conversation with Diane about program logistics. I think, I said, slowly, this might be exactly what I've been looking for without knowing it. Does that mean you're accepting our offer? I smiled. It means I'm seriously considering it. but I need to finish something first. That night, I returned to Charlotte's journal assignment, adding pages for this new possibility. A hybrid role that would honor my nursing experience while nurturing my creative interests. As I wrote, I realized that each option before me represented a different facet of myself: the caregiver, the artist, the sister, the grandmother. Perhaps the answer wasn't choosing just one, but finding a way to integrate them all into a life that was authentically mine, not defined solely by what others needed from me, but shaped by what I wanted to give. The following morning, I woke early and made a series of phone calls, first to Charlotte, then to Dr. Wilson, and finally to Lisa. By noon, I had outlined a plan that felt both daring and right, a patchwork solution that honored all parts of myself. I would accept the hospital's new position, but with modifications: 6 months in the city, focusing on training my replacement and establishing the art therapy program, followed by 3 months in Arizona with Charlotte during the worst of winter, where I would explore similar volunteer opportunities in her community. The remaining 3 months of each year would be flexible, allowing for travel or extended visits as interests and family needs evolved. For housing, I would take Lisa up on her offer to help me find a small garden apartment near them, but maintain my independence. Not because I feared living with family, but because I recognized that I thrived with a space that was wholly mine. When I presented this plan to Lisa over coffee that afternoon, her reaction surprised me. "Mom, that's perfect," she said, eyes wide. "It's like you're creating a portfolio life instead of a either-or decision." "A portfolio life," I repeated, liking the phrase. "Yes, that's exactly it. At my age, why should I have to choose just one path? Why not create a life as varied and interesting as I am?" Lisa reached across the table and took my hand. "You know what amazes me? How you've turned this whole difficult situation into something beautiful. When most people would have just been angry or bitter about being excluded from Thanksgiving, you used it as a catalyst for positive change." I squeezed her hand. "Sometimes the worst moments can be doorways to better ones, if we're brave enough to walk through them." "I'm still sorry about that day," she said quietly. For what it's worth, it was mostly my insecurity talking. Fear that I wasn't measuring up to the perfect family image Patricia expects. "There are no perfect families," I told her. "Just real ones, with all their messiness and complications. And I wouldn't trade our real family for anyone else's perfect illusion." As we finished our coffee, Lisa hesitated, then asked, "Would you still be willing to come for dinner this weekend? The kids really miss your cranberry sauce." I smiled, hearing the olive branch in her invitation. "I'd love to. Should I bring enough for everyone, or just the appreciative ones?" Lisa laughed, a genuine sound that bridged some of the distance between us. "Bring plenty. I have a feeling even Patricia might develop a taste for it this year." Walking home, I felt lighter than I had in years. The future stretching before me wasn't perfect or without challenges, but it was mine, chosen deliberately, shaped by my own desires rather than others' expectations. That evening, I completed the final pages in Charlotte's journal. On the last page, I answered her original question. What would Eleanor do if she weren't afraid? "She would live a life as multifaceted as the bowls she now creates," I wrote. "One with space for art and healing, for solitude and family, for giving and receiving. A life where boundaries are clear, but doors remain open. A life worthy of all, the years that came before, and all those still to come." 6 months into my new arrangement, I stood in the community center watching my advanced pottery students prepare for our first exhibition. Around me, the room buzzed with focused energy. 8 participants ranging in age from 15 to 72, each working on pieces that represented their healing journeys. Marcus, a 17-year-old cancer survivor with a flair for dramatic glazes, was carefully arranging his collection of cosmic-inspired mugs. "Ms. Eleanor," he called, Do you think these should be grouped by color or size? I walked over to examine his work. Vibrant swirls of blue, purple, and gold that seemed to capture the vastness of space in miniature. What story are you trying to tell with them? I asked. He considered the question seriously. I guess how something broken can become something beautiful. Each of these has a crack or flaw that I filled with gold, like that Japanese technique you taught us. Kintsugi, I nodded. Then I'd arrange them to showcase the gold repairs first. Lead with your message. As Marcus rearranged his display, I felt a surge of quiet pride. When we'd started the program, he had barely spoken, hunched protectively over his clay as if expecting criticism from all sides. Now he stood tall, confidently discussing artistic choices and volunteering to mentor younger patients. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a text from Lisa with a photo attached. It showed Sophia grinning broadly beside a science project display. Solar system in clay, how celestial bodies form. The caption read, "First prize. She says her inspiration came from Grandma's pottery lessons and NASA videos. When can you come see it?" I typed back. So proud of her. I'll stop by after the exhibition setup. Around 6? 6 o'clock found me pulling into Lisa and Daniel's driveway, where Sophia was waiting on the front steps, practically bouncing with excitement. "Grandma, you have to see my project. I used the technique you showed me for mixing sand into the clay to make the texture of Mars, and I made Jupiter with layers of colored clay, just like you did with those bowls last month." She grabbed my hand, tugging me inside where her solar system display dominated the dining room table. Each planet was rendered with impressive accuracy, not just in size ratios, but in surface details that showed careful research. "This is extraordinary, Sophia," I said, genuinely impressed. "You've captured the character of each planet so beautifully." "The judges said the same thing," she beamed. "They said most kids just paint styrofoam balls, but mine showed substantive understanding of planetary formation and composition." She pronounced the scientific terms carefully, clearly proud of mastering adult language. Lisa appeared in the doorway, smiling. She worked on it for weeks. Wouldn't let anyone help except for the technical specifications. "That's not true," Sophia corrected. "Grandma helped. Not directly, but everything she taught me about clay made it possible." The simple acknowledgement warmed me deeply. In my former life, I might have downplayed my influence, deflected the credit out of some misplaced sense of humility. Now I accepted it with grace. "I'm honored to have played a part in your success," I told her. "Artists inspire each other. That's how creativity grows." Lisa caught my eye over Sophia's head, her expression softening. "Mom, we're having a small celebration dinner for Sophia's win. Would you stay? It's nothing fancy, just pasta, but we'd love to have you." There was no calculation in her invitation, no hidden agenda, just a genuine desire for my company. How different from the days when my presence was valued primarily for what I could provide. "I'd love to," I answered simply. The meal was indeed casual. Spaghetti with garlic bread, a green salad, and sparkling cider for toasting Sophia's achievement. Adam regaled us with stories from his debate team competition, while Daniel asked thoughtful questions about my upcoming exhibition at the community center. "Will any of your pieces be included?" he inquired. I nodded. "A few. Diane thinks it's important for the instructor to participate alongside the students. Something about shared vulnerability creating trust." "She's right," Lisa commented. "It's what makes your program different from the other art therapy options. You're not just teaching technique, you're modeling the courage to create despite imperfection." I looked at her, surprised by the insight. "That's exactly what I'm trying to do. How did you know?" She smiled a little shyly. "I may have attended one of your sessions last month. Anonymously, sitting in the back." "You did?" I was stunned. Lisa had expressed polite interest in my work but had never indicated any desire to participate. "Why didn't you introduce yourself?" "I wanted to see you in your element without changing the dynamic," she admitted. "You were different there, Mom. So confident and joyful. I realized I've rarely seen you that way." Her observation struck home. For decades, my interactions with Lisa had been colored by concern, responsibility, and quiet sacrifice. She had seldom witnessed me experiencing pure, uncomplicated joy in my own pursuits. "I am happy there," I acknowledged. "There's something powerful about helping people discover creativity they didn't know they possessed." "Like you did with me and the science project," Sophia interjected. I smiled at her. "Exactly like that." After dinner, while Lisa and the children cleared the table, Daniel pulled me aside. "Eleanor, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you," he began, his expression serious. "It's about the house." My guard instantly rose, old patterns of wariness surfacing despite our improved relationship. "What about it?" "My trust fund matures next month, as you know." I nodded cautiously. "Lisa and I have been talking, and we've made a decision." He handed me an envelope. "This is for you." Inside was a check for the exact amount I had contributed to their mortgage over the years, plus interest. "Daniel, this isn't necessary," I started, but he held up a hand. "It is necessary, not legally perhaps, but morally. You invested in our family home at considerable personal cost. This is simply returning what was always rightfully yours." I stared at the check, emotions conflicting. On one hand, the amount represented security and opportunities I hadn't dared consider. On the other hand, accepting it felt somehow like negating the gift I had intended my contributions to be. Reading my hesitation, Daniel continued. "This isn't about erasing the past or denying your generosity. It's about setting things right, starting fresh on equal footing." "What does Lisa say about this?" "It was her idea," he replied. "She's been adamant that we need to close the ledger, as she puts it." I carefully folded the check and returned it to the envelope. "I'll think about it." Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, Lisa walked me to my car. "Daniel told you about the check?" I nodded. "It's a generous gesture, but—" "It's not a gesture, Mom," she interrupted firmly. "It's a correction. I've been doing a lot of thinking about patterns and legacies these past months, about what I learned from you about giving, and what I might be teaching my own children about receiving." She leaned against my car, her expression earnest in the soft porch light. "You taught me by example that love means sacrifice. That's a beautiful lesson, but incomplete. I've realized I also need to model how to receive with gratitude, how to acknowledge debts, how to restore balance when relationships become lopsided." Her words resonated with insights I'd only recently begun to articulate for myself. "When did you get so wise?" I asked softly. She smiled. "I had a good teacher. Even when I wasn't paying attention, I was learning." As I drove home to my garden apartment, a charming one-bedroom with large windows and a small patio where herbs and flowers now thrived, I thought about Lisa's words. The check in my purse represented more than money. It symbolized a profound shift in our relationship dynamic, an acknowledgement of worth that went beyond financial accounting. By the time I arrived home, I had made my decision. The money would not go toward practical necessities or sensible investments. Instead, it would fund the dreams I had deferred for decades, travel to places I'd only read about, master classes with renowned ceramic artists, perhaps even a small studio where I could work on larger pieces than my apartment allowed. The liberation in this choice brought tears to my eyes. For so long, I had defined responsibility as self-denial, as putting practical concerns above personal desires. Now, I was learning a different definition, one that included responsibility to my own joy, to the cultivation of gifts too long neglected. The community center exhibition opened the following weekend to unexpected success. Local media covered the event, highlighting the therapeutic benefits of our program and featuring interviews with several participants. Marcus's cosmic mugs sold out within the first hour, prompting a local gallery owner to offer him an apprenticeship. My own pieces, a series of nesting bowls in varying shades of blue, each bearing a simple phrase about renewal inside its rim, received thoughtful attention from visitors. Dr. Wilson purchased the entire set for display in the hospital's newly renovated pediatric waiting area. "These perfectly capture what we're trying to create there," he told me. A sense of containment, of being held safely through difficult transitions. As the exhibition wound down, I found myself in conversation with Diane about the program's future. "We've received 3 grant inquiries based on today's coverage," she informed me excitedly, "and the hospital board has approved funding for an expanded space dedicated specifically to art therapy." "That's wonderful news," I agreed. "The demand has certainly outgrown our current room." She hesitated, then continued. "There's something else, Eleanor. The Collins Foundation has expressed interest in replicating our program at sister facilities in several states. They're looking for someone to develop a comprehensive training curriculum and oversee implementation." I blinked, processing the implications. "That sounds like a major undertaking." "It is," she nodded. "It would involve travel, consulting, possibly even co-authoring a book on the methodology we've developed here. They specifically asked for you by name after their program director attended one of your workshops last month." The opportunity was breathtaking in its scope, far beyond anything I had imagined for myself at 63. "I'm not sure I'm qualified," I said honestly. "I'm not a trained art therapist, just a nurse who happens to enjoy pottery." Diane laughed. "That's precisely why they want you. Traditional art therapists approach the work from a clinical perspective. Your nursing background combined with your artistic sensibility creates something unique. A healing environment that doesn't feel therapy adjacent." "I'd need time to consider this," I told her. "My current arrangement with the hospital, my plans for Arizona." "Of course," she assured me. "This would be a gradual transition, not an immediate change. Take all the time you need." That night, I called Charlotte to share the unexpected development. "So let me get this straight," she said after I explained. "You're being headhunted. As a pottery guru for a national healing arts initiative?" I laughed at her characterization. "Something like that, though I wouldn't use those exact terms in professional contexts." "Ellie, do you realize how extraordinary this is? 6 months ago, you were working yourself to exhaustion paying someone else's mortgage. Now you're being asked to literally write the book on innovative therapeutic approaches. Put that way, the transformation did seem remarkable." "It doesn't feel real," I admitted. "Part of me is waiting for someone to realize I'm just making this up as I go along." "That's called imposter syndrome, and it's the hallmark of genuinely talented people," Charlotte replied. "The real frauds never question their qualifications." "What about our winter plans?" I asked. "I was looking forward to those months in Arizona with you." "Oh, honey," she said warmly. "Arizona isn't going anywhere. Neither am I. Some opportunities, though, only knock once. This sounds like one of them." Her support meant everything. Still, I needed to process this potential shift in my carefully balanced new life. The next morning, I visited my favorite local park, a peaceful space with winding paths and a small lake where I often walked while thinking through complex decisions. As I rounded the lake, I spotted a familiar figure on a bench ahead. Patricia, Daniel's mother, feeding breadcrumbs to a cluster of demanding ducks. She saw me at the same moment, her expression registering surprise and something less definable. For a brief instant, I considered turning back to avoid the encounter. Our relationship had improved marginally since the retirement home incident. She, was civil at family gatherings. I was cordial in return, but we had never achieved genuine warmth. Too many years of subtle power dynamics stood between us. Something made me continue forward. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps the confidence of knowing I no longer needed her approval. "Eleanor," she greeted me as I approached. "I didn't realize you frequented this park." "I come here often," I replied, sitting at the opposite end of her bench. "It's a good place to think." She nodded, tossing another handful of crumbs to the ducks. "I've always found water soothing. William thinks it's a waste of time to just sit and watch birds, but there's something meditative about it." This glimpse of Patricia as a contemplative being, separate from her role in my family drama, intrigued me. "I agree. The simplicity is refreshing." We sat in surprisingly comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the ducks squabble over breadcrumbs. Finally, Patricia spoke again. "I understand your pottery exhibition was quite successful. Lisa mentioned it at brunch last Sunday." "It exceeded our expectations," I acknowledged. "The program seems to be meeting a real need in the community." "William and I have been discussing our philanthropic priorities for next year," she said, her tone carefully casual. "Healthcare initiatives with innovative approaches are of particular interest." I turned to look at her directly, trying to understand if this was leading somewhere specific. She met my gaze, a hint of vulnerability showing through her usual composed facade. "I've been reevaluating certain perspectives recently. Lisa's reaction to my interference regarding your living situation was quite eye-opening." "In what way?" I asked, genuinely curious. Patricia sighed, folding the empty bread bag meticulously. "She defended you with a ferocity I've only seen her direct toward her children. It made me realize I've fundamentally misunderstood your relationship and perhaps misjudged you in the process." This admission, however circumspect, was more than I had ever expected from her. "Family dynamics can be complicated," I offered neutrally. "Indeed." She smoothed her skirt, a nervous gesture at odds with her usual confidence. "Eleanor, I owe you an apology. My actions regarding the retirement community were presumptuous and disrespectful. I believed I was helping, but in reality, I was imposing my own solution without consideration for your agency or preferences." The apology, while somewhat formal, seemed sincere. "Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate that." "I've also come to understand," she continued carefully, "that your financial support of Lisa and Daniel's household was more substantial than I had realized. While William and I contributed to special occasions and educational funds, you provided the foundation that made their lifestyle possible." I wasn't sure how to respond to this acknowledgement. "We all support family in different ways," I said finally. "Yes, but some ways require more sacrifice than others." She turned to face me fully. "I've never had to choose between my own needs and helping my children. That's a privilege I took for granted." The honesty of this statement touched me unexpectedly. "I made the choices that felt right at the time," I told her. "I don't regret helping them establish their home." "No, but you deserved more recognition for that contribution. And more respect." She hesitated, then added, "I understand they've repaid the financial portion, but some debts go beyond money." This was territory I hadn't expected to navigate with Patricia of all people. The complex emotional economies of family life, the invisible ledgers of giving and receiving we all maintain. "I'm not looking for additional recognition," I assured her. "Lisa and I have reached a good place in our relationship. That's worth more than any acknowledgement of past contributions." Patricia nodded, but seemed determined to finish what she had started. "Nevertheless, I would like to make amends in a tangible way. William and I have discussed establishing a named fund for your pottery program at the community center. No strings attached, simply a recognition of valuable work deserving support." I was momentarily speechless. The gesture was generous, certainly, but also represented a significant shift in how Patricia perceived me, no longer as an embarrassing connection to Lisa's less privileged background, but as someone whose work merited serious philanthropic investment. That's unexpected, I managed finally, though I'm not sure attaching my name to anything is necessary. It's not about the name, she said firmly. It's about acknowledging the value of what you've built there. Lisa has shared some of the participants' stories with us. It's making a real difference in people's lives. A duck waddled boldly up to Patricia's feet, demanding more bread. She shooed it gently. Nothing needs to be decided today. Perhaps we could continue this conversation over lunch sometime. The invitation represented yet another boundary shift, from tolerating each other at family gatherings to deliberately seeking out one-on-one interaction. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself with the realization that I meant it. As we parted ways, I continued my walk around the lake, my mind now occupied with this strange new development. Patricia and I would likely never be close friends, but perhaps we could build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition or resentment. The encounter left me contemplating how profoundly my life had changed since that painful Thanksgiving when Lisa had excluded me from the family dinner. What had seemed then like a devastating rejection had actually been the catalyst for a cascade of positive transformations. By the time I returned home, I had messages waiting from both Lisa and Dr. Wilson. Lisa's was an invitation to Adam's upcoming chess tournament with a photo of him practicing at their dining table. Dr. Wilson's was more formal, a request to discuss expanding my role at the hospital to include oversight of arts integration across multiple departments. Opportunities were unfolding in directions I had never anticipated, validating choices I had made from a place of self-respect rather than self-sacrifice. The painful boundary setting that had felt so risky months ago had created space for genuinely reciprocal relationships to develop. With Lisa, with colleagues, perhaps even with Patricia. I spent the evening updating my journal, the one Charlotte had given me in Arizona. What had begun as an exercise in decision-making had evolved into a chronicle of unexpected growth. Rereading earlier entries, I was struck by how tentative my first steps toward self-prioritization had been, how guilty I had felt about considering my own needs alongside others. Now, 6 months later, I wrote with confidence about professional opportunities, creative fulfillment, and relationships reconfigured on healthier foundations. The Eleanor who had timidly canceled a mortgage payment as a last-ditch effort to be seen and valued had blossomed into a woman comfortable with her own worth, unconcerned with justifying her choices to others. The next morning brought another surprise, an email from Marcus's parents sharing news of a scholarship he had received to attend a prestigious summer arts program. "This would never have happened without your encouragement," his mother wrote. "You saw potential in him when he could see nothing in himself." Reading those words, I was transported back to my own mother's kitchen table, where she had sat night after night helping me with homework despite her exhaustion from long hours of cleaning other people's homes. "I see what's in you, Eleanor," she would say when I grew frustrated, "even when you can't see it yourself." I had spent my adult life trying to provide that same steadfast support for Lisa, believing that self-sacrifice was the highest expression of maternal love. Now I was discovering a more nuanced truth, that modeling self-respect alongside generosity might be an equally important gift to offer those we love. This insight crystallized my decision about the Collins Foundation opportunity. I would accept their invitation to develop the training curriculum, but on terms that honored all aspects of my life. The work would be structured to allow for my winters with Charlotte in Arizona and regular time with my grandchildren. I would write the proposed book, but focus it on the collaborative philosophy that had made our program successful rather than positioning myself as the sole expert. Most importantly, I would approach this new chapter with the understanding that saying yes to this opportunity meant saying no to certain other possibilities, and that this selective curation of commitments was not selfishness but wisdom. When I shared my decision with Diane the following day, her response confirmed I was on the right path. "The foundation will be thrilled," she said. "But I'm more pleased to see you advocating for a structure that works for your whole life, not just your professional ambitions." That's exactly the balanced approach we want to model for program participants. Later that week, I invited Lisa for coffee at my apartment, something that had become a monthly ritual between us, a deliberate carving out of time for adult conversation, separate from family gatherings. As she settled onto my small sofa, I noticed she looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion I recognized from my own years of trying to be everything to everyone. "Rough week?" I asked, handing her a steaming mug. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Just the usual juggling act. Adam has chess tournaments 3 weekends in a row. Sophia needs specialized art supplies for a new school project. Daniel's working late trying to make partner, and I'm preparing for a major client presentation while trying to coordinate everything else." I listened without immediately offering solutions, another change in our dynamic. Where once I would have stepped in with offers of practical help, now I created space for her to simply be heard. "Sometimes I don't know how you did it all those years," she continued after a sip of coffee. "Working full-time, raising me alone, keeping everything running smoothly without complaint." "I complained plenty," I corrected her gently. "Just not to you. And as for doing it all, I didn't, not really. There were many things I let go, priorities I sacrificed without fully recognizing their importance." She looked at me curiously. "Like what? Creative pursuits? Meaningful friendships? Taking care of my health? Even allowing myself to fully experience emotions like anger or disappointment?" I stirred my coffee thoughtfully. "I thought being a good mother meant concealing struggles and sacrificing personal needs. I'm not sure that served either of us particularly well in the long run." Lisa absorbed this, her expression pensive. "I think I've been making some of the same mistakes. Trying to be perfect at work, perfect at home, never letting anyone see the cracks. It's an exhausting way to live," I acknowledged, "and ultimately unsustainable." "So how do I change it?" she asked, a hint of the daughter seeking maternal guidance emerging through her adult composure. "How do I break the pattern without letting everyone down?" I considered her question carefully. "I think it begins with permission. Giving yourself the same grace you extend to others. And then with small, deliberate choices that prioritize sustainability over momentary approval. Like canceling mortgage payments?" she suggested with a small smile. "That was perhaps more dramatic than necessary," I laughed. "But yes, like recognizing when a pattern has become harmful and finding the courage to interrupt it, even when that feels frightening or selfish." Lisa set down her mug, her expression serious. "I've been thinking about going part-time at the firm, just for a year or two while the kids are at these critical ages. Daniel's promotion should offset some of the financial impact, but it would still mean lifestyle adjustments." "What's holding you back?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "Fear of losing ground, I guess. Of being seen as less committed than my colleagues. Of setting a bad example for Sophia about professional ambition." She twisted her wedding ring nervously. "And if I'm being completely honest, fear of proving Patricia right about working mothers needing to choose between career success and family." I nodded, understanding these concerns intimately. Those are valid fears, but I wonder if there's another perspective to consider. Which is that by modeling balanced choices, you're teaching Sophia something more valuable than unrelenting ambition. You're showing her that worth isn't measured solely by professional achievement or maternal sacrifice. that it's possible to create a life where multiple values coexist, even if imperfectly. She was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this. "When did you get so wise, Mom?" I laughed at the echo of my own question to her months earlier. Not wisdom, so much as the perspective that comes from learning things the hard way. If my experiences can help you avoid some of the same pitfalls, that's a form of mothering I'm happy to continue providing. Lisa reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm grateful for that, and for the way our relationship has evolved. I feel like I'm finally getting to know you as a person, not just as my mother. I'm enjoying that too, I told her sincerely. It turns out I like the adult you've become, beyond just loving you as my daughter. Her phone chimed with a calendar. Alert, and she sighed. I should go. Sophia's dance class ends in 30 minutes. As she gathered her things, she paused by my small pottery workspace in the corner. Is this a new piece? She asked, gesturing to a half-finished vase on the wheel. Just something I'm experimenting with, I explained. A different clay body, more textural than what I usually work with. She studied it with genuine interest. It's beautiful. The form reminds me of something, but I can't quite place it. I smiled, touched by her observation. It's inspired by an old teapot my mother used to have, the one with the broken spout that she refused to replace because it had belonged to her grandmother. Lisa's eyes widened in recognition. I remember that teapot. You used to let me drink hot chocolate from it when I was small, and you'd say that the finest things often carry the marks of their history. I finished with her. Yes, exactly. Our shared memory created a moment of connection across 3 generations. My mother's influence flowing through me to Lisa, and through her to Adam and Sophia. Not a perfect transmission, certainly. Each generation interpreted and adapted the lessons of the last, sometimes rejecting them outright, sometimes embracing them too uncritically. But in the imperfect flow of values and stories between us lay something precious and enduring. As I walked Lisa to her car, she hugged me with unexpected fierceness. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For showing me there's more than one way to be strong. For being brave enough to change our story. I held her close. This daughter who had once been the center of my universe, who was now finding her own center while still remaining connected to mine. Thank you for being willing to grow with me, I replied. Not everyone gets a second chance to build something better. After she drove away, I returned to my apartment and seated myself at the pottery wheel. The vase, inspired by my mother's teapot, awaited completion, its form emerging gradually beneath my hands, shaped by memory, by intention, by the natural properties of the clay itself. Like my life, it was a work in progress, constantly evolving under my touch. Not perfect, but authentically mine. 1 year to the day after I canceled that mortgage payment, I stood in a sunlit gallery space surrounded by friends, family, and strangers admiring the culmination of my journey, my first solo exhibition, Second Blooming. The collection featured 36 pieces chronicling my transformation from caregiver to creator. Each work represented a milestone, the first tentative bowl I'd made after decades away from clay, vessels inspired by my Arizona visits with Charlotte, collaborative pieces created with my community center students, and finally, the more confident experimental works that had emerged as my skills and vision expanded. I can't believe this is all your work, whispered a woman beside me, admiring a series of wall hangings that incorporated ceramic elements with fiber and wood. It's like seeing someone's entire life journey expressed in clay. I smiled, recognizing Patricia's sister-in-law, a woman I'd met only briefly at family gatherings over the years. Not my entire life, just the most recent chapter. Well, it's extraordinary, she continued. William and Patricia couldn't stop talking about your work at their anniversary dinner last month. It's clear why they've become such advocates for your program. This casual revelation still had the power to surprise me, The idea that Patricia and William discussed my work with pride in social settings, that they had evolved from reluctant in-laws to genuine supporters. While we would never share the easy intimacy I enjoyed with Charlotte, we had developed a relationship based on mutual respect that enriched our extended family dynamic. Across the room, I spotted Adam deep in conversation with Marcus, my former student who had recently been accepted to a prestigious art school. At 17 and 15 respectively, they made an unlikely pair. Adam with his chess champion's analytical mind, Marcus with his artistic temperament, yet they had formed a friendship based on shared intellectual curiosity that transcended their different interests. Sophia flitted about the gallery in a dress she had designed herself, proudly explaining the technical aspects of pottery to anyone who would listen. "My grandma uses reduction firing for these pieces," I overheard her telling an elderly couple. "That's why the glazes have those amazing color variations. It's all about chemistry and oxygen control." Her confidence in discussing my work filled me with quiet joy. Where once she had been just a recipient of my care, she had become a genuine appreciator of my skills, incorporating elements of my artistic journey into her own evolving identity. Lisa approached, handing me a glass of sparkling water. "How are you holding up? You've been on your feet for hours." "I'm fine," I assured her, too excited to feel tired. She studied me with the attentive gaze that had become characteristic of our relationship this past year, observant, respectful, no longer clouded by old assumptions or expectations. "You're glowing," she said simply. "It suits you." Daniel joined us, his arm slipping naturally around Lisa's waist. The university representative was impressed, he informed me. She mentioned something about a visiting artist position in their ceramics department next semester. I nodded, having already discussed this possibility with the department chair earlier in the evening. Just 1 day a week, a perfect complement to my Collins Foundation work and the community center program. "And your Arizona winter plans?" Lisa asked, knowing how important those months with Charlotte had become to my well-being. "Still firmly on the calendar," I assured her. "The university understands my schedule isn't negotiable." This ability to set clear parameters around my commitments remained one of the most profound changes in my life. Where once I had molded my time and energy around others' needs, I now created thoughtful boundaries that allowed me to honor multiple priorities without depletion. Lisa squeezed my hand. "Good. We'll miss you during those months, but the kids love their Arizona vacations. Now." This, too, was a new development. Lisa and Daniel bringing Adam and Sophia to visit during my Arizona stays, creating new family traditions in Charlotte's sun-drenched home. These visits, structured around mutual enjoyment rather than obligation, had a light-hearted quality that our more duty-bound gatherings in the past had lacked. "Speaking of the kids," Daniel said, checking his watch, "we should probably collect them soon. School night." Lisa nodded agreement but made no immediate move to leave, her gaze traveling around the gallery. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," she said quietly. "Not just for the exhibition, impressive as it is, for everything you've built this past year." Her words touched me deeply, acknowledging as they did the broader transformation that had occurred. Not just my artistic development, but the reconfiguration of my entire life on more balanced terms. "Thank you," I replied simply. "It means a lot to hear that from you." As they moved away to gather the children, Diane approached with an elegant woman I recognized as the director of the Collins Foundation. "Eleanor, you remember Julia Stevens," Diane said by way of introduction. "Of course." I shook her hand warmly. "Thank you for coming tonight." "I wouldn't have missed it," Julia replied. "The exhibition beautifully illustrates the philosophy behind your curriculum. Seeing your personal artistic evolution alongside the collaborative community pieces tells exactly the story we want our program to convey." "That art isn't just about technical skill or final products," I suggested, "but about the transformative process itself." "Precisely." She gestured toward a grouping of vessels created by my hospital program participants. These pieces are particularly moving when one understands the circumstances under which they were created. Each vessel in that collection represented a patient's healing journey, some smooth and symmetrical, others deliberately asymmetrical or bearing visible repairs using the kintsugi technique of mending with gold. The accompanying plaque explained that each artist had decided how to incorporate their medical experiences into their work, either directly through form and surface treatment or metaphorically through the making process itself. The book manuscript is developing along similar lines, I told her, focusing less on prescriptive techniques and more on creating conditions where authentic expression can emerge. Julia nodded approvingly. That's exactly the approach that differentiates your work from traditional art therapy programs. The healing emerges not from following clinical protocols, but from the dignity of creating something meaningful within a supportive community. As they moved on to examine other pieces, Charlotte appeared at my side, resplendent in a turquoise dress adorned with handcrafted silver jewelry from her favorite Arizona artists. "Well, sister mine," she said, linking her arm through mine, "you've certainly come a long way from that tearful phone call about being excluded from Thanksgiving, Jenner." I smiled at her characteristic directness. "That feels like another lifetime ago." "In many ways it was," she agreed. "Though I maintain that Lisa did you a favor with that particular exclusion. Sometimes the best gifts come wrapped in the most painful packages." There was wisdom in her perspective, though I would never have recognized it in the raw aftermath of that rejection. The hurt of being shut out of a family gathering had catalyzed changes I might otherwise have postponed indefinitely, confronting unhealthy patterns, asserting boundaries, reclaiming dormant parts of myself. "You were right about the journal," I told her, referring to the turquoise-covered notebook she had given me in Arizona. Writing through those early decisions helped clarify what I really wanted. "And what did you discover you wanted?" she asked, though we had discussed this many times. "Balance," I replied without hesitation. "Connection without obligation, creativity without apology, the freedom to give from fullness rather than depletion." Charlotte nodded satisfaction. "And to think some people believed you were just being petty about a dinner invitation and a mortgage payment." I laughed at her bluntness. "I suppose from the outside it might have appeared that way initially. But the results speak for themselves." She gestured expansively around the gallery. "Look at all you've created. Not just the art, but the programs, the relationships, the legacy. Legacy. The word resonated deeply. Not the legacy I had once envisioned, perhaps, focused as it was on ensuring Lisa's material comfort and security, but something richer and more complex. A demonstration that transformation remains possible at any age, that boundaries can become gateways, that what appears to be an ending might actually be a beginning. As the evening drew to a close, I found myself standing before my favorite piece in the exhibition, a large vessel created during those first tentative months after reclaiming my time and resources. Its surface bore the marks of its making, fingerprints, tool marks, small imperfections I had chosen to preserve rather than smooth away. Inside, visible only when viewed from above, a spiral of tiny handcrafted ceramic flowers emerged from the base, climbing toward the rim in a continuous, graceful progression. The piece was titled simply "Becoming," a recognition that growth is never finished, that each phase of life offers new possibilities for evolution and expression. Dr. Wilson paused beside me, studying the piece with appreciation. "This one speaks to me every time I see it," he commented. "There's something about the contrast between the textured exterior and that internal flowering." I nodded, pleased by his perception. "Someone once told me that the finest things often carry the marks of their history. I've come to believe that's true of people as well." As guests began to depart, Lisa approached with Adam and Sophia in tow, both looking reluctantly ready to leave. "We're heading out," she said. "But first," she handed me a small wrapped package, a little exhibition opening gift from all of us. Inside was a delicate silver pendant, a miniature pottery wheel with a tiny vessel perched atop it. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the symbolism unmistakable. Daniel found an artisan jeweler who specializes in custom pieces representing life transitions, Lisa explained. "We thought it captured this chapter of your journey perfectly." I was deeply touched by the thoughtfulness behind the gift, not just its beauty, but the recognition it represented. My daughter saw me now, not only as her mother, but as a woman with her own creative identity, worthy of celebration. "It's perfect," I told her, immediately fastening it around my neck. "I'll treasure it." As they prepared to leave, Sophia darted back for one more hug. "I'm going to be just like you when I grow up, Grandma," she whispered fiercely. "Strong and artistic, and brave." Her words caught me by surprise, a reminder that our actions resonate beyond our awareness, that the choices we make in midlife or beyond can shape the aspirations of generations that follow. "You'll be your own unique version of those things," I told her, smoothing her hair. "That's even better." After everyone had gone, I wandered slowly through the now quiet gallery, taking in the collection through fresh eyes. Each piece contained a story, of learning, of healing, of connection. Together they chronicled a journey I could never have imagined that painful night when I canceled the mortgage payment, a small act of self-respect that had unlocked a cascade of transformations. As I prepared to leave, my phone chimed with a text from Charlotte. "Forgot to mention, found perfect location for that summer pottery retreat we discussed. Sedona Mountains, cabins with private studios, room for 12 students. Say yes, and I'll book it tomorrow." I smiled, typing back without hesitation. Yes. Absolutely yes. One simple word that I had once reserved primarily for others' requests and needs, now deployed in service of my own dreams and desires. Perhaps that was the most profound change of all. The recognition that my yes was valuable, that it deserved to be given mindfully, joyfully, and sometimes, most importantly, to myself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.